We're going to start our CRA meeting. If anybody would like to comment, please fill out a card and turn it over to the Sergeant at Arms or to the Secretary. It's 5 o'clock straight up. We'll go ahead and open our Community Redevelopment Agency meeting here at City Council Chambers. It's October 19th, 5 o'clock. We'll have the Pledge of Allegiance by Mr. Brown, please.
Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sir. Call the roll, please.
Board Member Brown.
Here.
Chairperson Hoag.
Here.
Board Member Kellum.
Here.
Board Member Morrison.
Here.
Vice Chairperson Raymond.
Here.
Here for is public participation. Have no cards and nobody cares to say anything, and our attorney's here just in time. We can go into new business. First item is to approve the minutes from September 21st, 2021. Everybody's had them and read them. We look for a motion, please.
I move to approve the minutes from the regular CRA board meeting from September 21st, 2021.
Thank you. Second.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the approval of the minutes. You call the roll.
Board Member Brown.
4.
Chairperson Hoag.
4.
Board Member Kellum.
4.
Board Member Morrison.
4.
Vice Chairperson Raymond.
4.
Okay, our next item is general discussion on CRI funds. And this is submitted by Councilmember Callum. Vicky, I know we don't have her on the screen, but good evening. How are you?
I'm here. I'm in New Jersey, and it's cold. Thank you, Mayor and Council, for meeting. I just wanted to have like a general discussion meeting on the CRA funds and where we are, and what kind of things we can implement, programs or grants in the coming year. I had asked Todd to get us together kind of a general report on where we are, how many things we've accomplished. I went over the CRA plan, and I'm just wondering, are we accomplishing these things that we set out to do in the plan? And Todd, do you have the information that I asked about?
Yes, ma'am. Mayor, if you like, or we could have John DeLeo go ahead and give an overview of the presentation. As Vicki Callum indicated, I did ask John to prepare a high-level list of everything the CRA has done since its inception. So as we know, 2012 was its inception year, and immediately it began hitting the ground running. And so in 2013, we had our first project. So John is going to go over a detailed or a high-level rather list of those things. Feel free to ask questions. And I've also went the further step to ask John to give us the current debt schedule, debt repayment service for the CRA, as well as a projected debt service if everything goes through with the purchase of the property next door. And lastly, I asked him to give us a projection of CRA revenues going into the next fiscal year. So Mayor, if you please, we'll hear from John.
John, you got the floor, sir.
All right, and if council, if they happen to have their budget books with them that shows what the CRA budget is for in the 21-22 book, that would be helpful for them. If not, you could follow along. And the real purpose is what we have done is we went back to 2012, 2013 from the inception, and went back through a list of all the things that were accomplished in the CRA. And these were things that were scheduled and did happen. And I just, since council might not have this in front of them, but to give you an idea, in 2014, the CRA The city benefited from the CRA for 85, and I'll round off, $85,000. In 2015, we had a branding initiative, roadway, parking, lot striping. The CRA funded that for $28,000. In 2016, with the decorative signs, street signs, posts and lights, West Central Adams Sidewalk Project was accomplished, bike arrow markings, Oak Lane engineering design permitting. The CRA covered that for $280,000. In 2017, we benefited with solar lights, planters on North Atlantic, speed limit crosswalk signs, North Atlantic, mobility master plan. We benefited $285,000. 2018, the survey and design for the MGF, $61,000. 2019, the MGF, Cape Center, this was engineering designs. North Atlantic Phase 3, we finished at $108,000. We did Pierce Avenue sidewalk, $6,900. And then we thermoplastic all beach parking lots, and we did more Oak Lane engineering design. The CRA covered that for $342,000. In FY 2020, Pierce Avenue sidewalks were done. North Atlantic Phase 3 North Atlantic Phase 3, the balance was done. That was $5,000. Corner improvements, $78,000. West Central Streetscape, began that, $43,000. Polk and Orange drainage. All these were scheduled in FY 2020 and were accomplished. We benefited from the CR covering that for $473,000. This past year, 2021, the grant signs, $9,999. The MGF Cape Center, of course, that's in progress, $3.7 million. And we completed West Central for $2.1 million. That was a total of $5.8 million in 2021 through the CRA. So since its inception, the grand total of the CRA funded the city $7.4 million. Pretty impressive, and a heck of a lot of stuff done. I think the importance of a CRA speaks for itself. Is there any questions on that before I move on? Because I'm just going to cover what our revenues are coming in and expected for next year, and then I'll just explain the debt service that we'll continue to have. Any questions on that?
No,
If
no, I
anybody
don't have any.
copy, they could have that. Oh, go ahead. Yep.
I was interested in, what are you going to do next, John? The debt?
The
Service?
revenue that we receiving in the 21-22 budget, and then in 22-23, if we stay at the same rate, and this is just an estimate, of course, I'll give you where I think we're going to be next year.
Okay, that'd be great.
Can you review the debt service currently and projected?
The current debt service is comprised of 3 items. Lift Station 6, which was taken on 5 or 6 years ago, or whatever, has about 3 years left. That's $52,000 of the debt service total that you see in your budget book, where it shows what the total debt service is. The MGF, based on the loan we had gotten, the MGF $686,000, and then the Promenade, which is the project we're doing over here. And of course, the Promenade, we approved the budget before we finalized the loan. So we put an estimate of $200,000 in there, but it'll be less than that. So 900, if you look at your budget book on page 55, you'll see that our debt service this year is $938,000.
So that's approximately 50% of the CRA revenue. So the remaining portion of the CRA revenue goes to other projects throughout the budget. So half of the CRA is paying for CRA debt. The other half of it is going to projects throughout the budget. And it's projected to be about the same next year.
Yeah, next year, it'll probably be, it could be $40,000 or $50,000 less, around $868,000 actually. Because when you see the loan data we did get the loan for 1.61 with an estimated cost of $131,000 for 10 years. But of course, we'll cover that in the council meeting. And we'll continue to pay off the lift station 6. And then the MGF, of course, will have like, what is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 more years. So, and, but
So the duration of the CRA is to 2040. Is that correct?
Yes.
So so that gives us 19 years left. And how much of that, the debt, I mean, how long are we 10 years out on all of them? Or the new loan is going to be for 10 years? What I'm getting at is will there ever be money to do other projects, or will it all be tied up in the debt all the time?
Yes, there will be. Debt will be coming off of the CRA. The burden will go away as these previous debts are paid. I think you said lift station 6 has got about 3 years left on that one, for example. The newest one, if it goes through, would be later tonight about the Promenade property, and that would be a new 10-year debt service schedule. So 10 years out, so in 20.
right about a 2031.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
at this point, there's
Okay.
nothing, and other things will start rolling off in those years. So let's keep in mind also that the CRA will continue to grow. It has only grown since its inception, and that funding is there to help the CRA area, to fund redevelopment and projects that help reinvigorate the area. We all know that we can't spend this money outside of the CRA area. It has to be spent inside the CRA area. We're subject to auditing requirements every year and increased scrutiny from the county as well as the state. The county entered into an interlocal agreement with the city some 3 or 4 years ago, where we had to sign an agreement that said, yeah, there's going to be an additional level of scrutiny. And we know that we were very successful in our negotiations with the county in that interlocal agreement. Not all CRAs were. We still have the authority to leverage that, pledge those revenues, leverage them for debt for CRA infrastructure projects. And it's been made very clear to me by our county commissioner that because we have focused so much on infrastructure projects, that we're not vulnerable to attack. The vulnerabilities occur when you do private projects with individuals and what they call picking winners and losers. Somebody gets a grant, somebody doesn't get a grant. How do you explain to that person who didn't get it why they didn't get it? We've stayed away from that, thank goodness. And it keeps our nose clean as a CRA is the best way to say it. Yes, Dave.
I'd just like to add a quick snippet of information. I think it's always important to remember that Brevard County is a charter county, and because of that, they authorized the city of Cape Canaveral to create a CRA. And they ultimately, and Anthony, jump in here if I'm going too far astray, but they ultimately have the ability to unilaterally amend our CRA. I'm not going to go into much more detail than that, but so I think we always need to be careful. I'm not saying that we have to bow down or do anything that, is a city we don't want to do, but we always need to keep in mind that ultimately Brevard County has some ability to, if they so choose, to come in and maybe revise our CRA in one way or another. So it's always important to keep in mind.
Dave, I have a question. Did the county also approve our community redevelopment plan?
Yes.
Okay. That was part of getting the redevelopment process going, right?
That's correct. That was yes.
Okay. So, right now, in the budget, we have $25,000 in grant money for sign. How many people have taken advantage of that? 25,000.
I believe we've had two fully complete the application process. We've had, I'm going to just say 3 other property owners who showed some interest to the point of coming in and going through a pre-application conference with our staff, but only 2 at this point.
And how much money is left in that, is out of the 25,000?
Approximately 15,000.
Okay. All right. So, you know, going through the plan, I've noticed that there's a lot of other initiative things that we could be doing with the CRA money. You know, as far as the debt, you know, that's one aspect, but there's improvement, beautification programs, city partnership opportunities, incentive programs that it says we can go above and beyond what's listed to help businesses. Also the flexible zoning and land development, rehabilitation and repurposing of existing buildings. And Todd, you and I had talked about this a while back about, you know, the buildings on Center Street, you know, with all the for sale or for lease signs along that corridor there. And it's been that way since I've been here, and that was 30 years ago. You know, on trying to rehab those, you know, spend some money to rehab those to attract businesses. Is that something that we could do down the road? You know, there's so many existing blighted buildings that we need to fix. And it just seems like we don't do that. And I understand, you know, what you're saying about picking winners and losers, but if we do a landscaping grant or a facade grant, you know, and there's a criteria that people have to meet to be able to get money that we match or whatever, however we set it up. I mean, there's not winners and losers in the sign game that we're doing, you know, for people to sign up to get help with their signs. I just think that there's so many existing buildings that need to be rehabbed or whatever that we could do to make it more attractive. And, you know, it also says in our plan that we, you know, the importance of small businesses and especially this year and after COVID and what we've been through, if we could squeeze some more money out of the CRA to help them. And that's what I wanted to talk to the other council about, to see what their ideas were, and see what we could do to get more help out there for businesses and residents alike.
Yes, if I could talk about one of those items you just mentioned about and the CRA taking an active role in redevelopment. And this is one of the first tenets, and when I went to the Redevelopment Academy, they teach you these things. The purchase and aggregation of blighted properties is directly taking on blight. So if you've got an area of your city with just older buildings, they're not in their prime anymore, they're underutilized assets, they're not able to get market rents or whatever, or they're for sale, and you see lots of those signs in certain areas of cities, you can say that area really needs to be recharged. So the CRA has a tool that can purchase those properties, aggregate those properties, especially if they're contiguous to one another. You can redevelop those properties, you can tear it down and just leave it just a greenfield site for sale. And there's lots of things you could do, public-private partnerships, but when there's some reinvestment and reinvigoration of an area like that, something grows as a result of that. It continues to go down the street. The next property says, well, I'm going to fix up my property. And the next property says, well, I'm going to fix up my property. And it becomes contagious like that. So yes, that is absolutely something the CRA can do. And we talked about that at our March retreat. We are expecting to bring back to the council a plan to move into that phase of redevelopment. It's important that we strategically think about the remaining years we have here to do something like that. There's only a few areas of our city that that could use that attention. But I would also recommend, I would highly recommend, as Mickey Kellum is saying, that we use our CRA to directly tackle that blight to the extent that we can. Now, you can't force people to sell property, obviously, but to the extent that you can to do that direct redevelopment is wonderful. So I would totally support that. And then we do look forward to bringing back to this council a proposal for that, supporting that.
Well, thank you. I would like to hear any ideas from the other council or their thoughts on this. I really think that, you know, we need to really help out the businesses. And do we have to revamp the paint, the sign money, add more money to that this year? Or is there enough that we could maybe start a landscaping grant program or a painting program? And with the same criteria as the sign plan, to implement a few more small incremental things that we could do to help the city look better and to help the businesses.
Mayor, if I could, the board certainly can consider expanding that. The sign program seems to have stalled. There's only been so many interested applicants, as Dave mentioned a few minutes ago. There's still money in there. The program gets advertised. I would say it's been a small success. It has not been a huge success, but to those few who got it, it was very important. One of the things that we did that helped us get out of that picking winners and losers is if we have very clear-cut criteria for an application, and then you make it a first come, first serve. So
Right.
The loser is only a loser because he or she didn't get in soon enough.
Right.
That's
Exactly.
a better way to handle it. If we wanted to expand that into some other program, I would recommend very strongly we consider wording it that way.
Yes, I agree. Yes. Well, thank you. I would like to hear from the rest of the council if they have some input. Thank you.
Angela, start with you.
I just wanted to say that I found out today that we will be finished paying the debt on City Hall in only 2 years. And I think that's a great thing. That's good management. I think that there are some buildings that are old that can be painted. I noticed when I bike rode, I am not bike riding right now, but I noticed that just even paint, the one side, I had talked to Ralph Perrone because I thought he owned the entire building at the north side of A1A and Center Street. And I noticed that was really awful when I bike rode down the first driveway that you would get there. And I also noticed that it was greatly improved when the people took over the Wizard of Oz Museum and they painted a lot of colors. And there was a comment made there. The comment was that the city doesn't like color. And I thought that was rather humorous. That came through my husband because I didn't stop to talk to the new people yet. I will when I can walk. Anyway, but the far side of that building, I thought it was owned by Ralph Perrone, but it's not. It's another owner. Really needs to be painted badly. And it's pretty bad back there. I noticed that backs up to where the granite building is back there. And then they have that area that they call storage, and I still believe people live there. Those need to be taken care of. And I did notice on the south side, that front of the building there was used up to about 1.5 years ago by a travel agency. I had no idea. One day I walked in there just to see what was going on. And they had some type of a travel agency. And the other thing to note, I noticed people looking at that building today, the front part of that building. And I know it is for lease, I believe. And it seems like the people that manufacture the buoys they're doing very well. And they're always hiring, and they have a help wanted sign out constantly. And a lot of people are employed there, a whole lot. And I think that's great. That's great. I think we're doing a good job. I think that we've made a lot of improvements. When I go to Space Coast League of Cities and also Florida League of Cities, people are always commenting on how good the city looks and that they are happy with the improvements that have been made. And I think that we need to continue to move forward, and we have. Thank you.
Good.
Okay. First, I want to thank Nikki for bringing the CRA funds up. There's a lot of information that the public is unaware of when we're dealing with CRA. First, I want to go ahead and thank all the members of the council that we agreed on the promenade, but the question is, what did we agree on? Did we agree that it should be a future possibility, future need, present need? But we did agree that we do want it. Secondly, I want to thank all the members of the council. Every council member approved the CRA budget that included the promenade for $900,000 was mentioned in that budget. Every council member had the opportunity to remove that $900,000 from that particular CRA budget. Nobody chose to remove that $900,000 from the budget. So that tells me right there, we studied this, we went over this. It was not something that was put upon us in one day. That was information that everybody had to study, and not one council member decided to vote against the $900,000 for the promenade. And I think it speaks well for the council that we're all in agreement on this, and look forward to moving forward. The question I have, how did the name Promenade come through? Because there's a lot of kickback on the name. And I think if the name Promenade was changed to something else, the citizens would be more willing to accept it.
I like City Hub or City Plex or even City Plaza. I think that really tells us what we plan to do there.
And excuse me, another thing, nobody has set a date or time to tear the building down. I got an email today and somebody questioned that, tearing it down, but that hasn't even been voted on or decided on or anything, but it's a future question that the council will have to address. But I just want to thank every member of the council for what they've done to make this project move forward. Thank you.
Yeah, just curious. I think Mickey's question, Councilmember Kellum's question was, what are your thoughts on using the money that's not being serviced for debt in other ways? And I think I heard from Mayor Pro Tem Raymond some ideas on some specific properties on Center Street, I believe you were referencing. I'm just trying to make sure I'm tracking here. I think Councilmember Kellum talked in general. And Councilmember Brown, I didn't hear anything from you on any. Do you like her idea?
Yes, I like her idea that some of these blighted properties, businesses, especially like maybe on Center Street, we can address. I'm all for, we've always, addressing the blight in our city has always been the council's one of their primary objectives. And I also agree that that's something we need to address with CRA monies when we have the opportunity. Thank you.
Got it. I agree with that as well. I think I want to back up something that our finance director said. When you were going through the three projects, Mr. Mayor, if I may ask John a question on Lift Station 6, roughly 52,000 you said was being used. Multi-generational facility, 686,000 was being used to service the debt. And then what was the number for the promenade that we would be used?
Approved in the CRA budget, 200, it equates to about 200,000.
Okay.
But that's going to be lower. It's probably going to be lower than that because the loan hadn't even begun, the process hadn't even begun. So it had to be estimated how much that may cost the city. So, but that's going to come down.
So, thank you. So roughly the number that I saw in the budget on 55, that 938,414, that's with the promenade?
Yes.
Okay. And so this, at least for the next 3 years until that lift station falls off, it's going to be just under $1 million to service the debt. our revenue coming in from the tax incremental financing from Cape Canaveral, not including the loans, the transfer from the general fund, is that projected to be, well, last year it was 776,000 from the Cape Canaveral portion, and then an additional matching amount
Yes.
totaling 1.4. Okay, I understand. And so this year we're projecting roughly $1 million, and that's where our city manager said 50% of that revenue would go to service it. Thank you. Okay, so yeah, as far as CRA, blight, I think a vague word that we all, and that's where a lot of scrutiny comes into, is how you interpret blight. But I am in agreement that we should be trying to use the funds in a fair way across the board, not just on public properties, because once this is away, it's one of the only ways we can really use it in the private sector. And so but I do think that if we can focus on do our part first around businesses, since that's an example, like sidewalks, infrastructure, trees, I would put that as a higher priority. Public property investments, more horizontal out, opposed to the density that we're seeing today, where really out of the $7.4 million that we've spent in the CRA, 75% roughly of that has went really to just a few public parcels. And so I just think from more of a strategy, we should try to take that 50% that we can spend and spread it out and make it go as far as we can. In regards to picking winners and losers, there's, you can win, like the sign is a great example. We set $50,000 aside to do that. And so there really were, sounds like it was about $5,000 a piece per grant. Is that right? So 2 people got it, applied and received the grant totaling $10,000. Well, they clearly were winners, but they followed a process, and it sounds like maybe a couple more might come in, and the remaining 15,000 might be gone soon. But what I'm more focused on, and just the contrast to that, is everyone who didn't get a sign grant, or someone just who bought a sign says, well, I wish I would have known, I didn't receive those funds. A couple of ideas, I think that's what council members looking for, is instead of maybe setting the threshold so high, you can give everyone the same opportunity, and the way you calculate the total fund would be proportional to the entire city. And so it wouldn't be as much money that would go out, but let's just say we have, for easy math, 100 business parcels that would be able to put signs up. I would be from the leaning towards the approach to say, take that 50,000 and put it into the 100, so everyone gets $2,000. Our city attorney would have to help, I think, on how to do that, but I would give them more than just a sign latitude, because like the example I shared, they might have just bought a sign. And I would say the funds could be, you can use $2,000 on your storefront for landscaping, and put a list of approved expenditures: landscaping, signs, paint, any type of external aesthetics that would help improve the beautification of the city. And they would have a certain time limit to use that money, opposed to applying, and they would simply turn in their receipts. We would review the expenditures or have some sort of form for them. If with receipts, just like you do a travel reimbursement for a business, I think that's something people are very familiar with. They would turn in their receipts, their list of expenditures, and they would qualify for up to $2,000 of improvements. that way, everyone is a winner. Everyone had the same opportunity. And I would be shocked if a business did not take advantage of that. And I think it comes down to good communication, sending letters, and as the deadline's approaching, to really encourage them, hey, you've got 3 months left. You've got $2,000 that you can invest in the aesthetics of your building to help with blight. Use it. This is just an idea. It might have problems with it, but that's something that I've thought about. Another, so I think compiling the types of things, maybe this is something our beautification board, our economic development board could go through. Maybe we hold a workshop with businesses in the community and ask them what they think about our ideas on how we could use funds that way. And was my math wrong? I said 100 goes in. That was making somebody mad, wasn't it? So, thank you. So I felt that hit me. I felt that. But I think that the point is made. And so if it's $500 per business, that way I think we wouldn't upset the county. To our community development director, Dave Dickey's excellent point that they're a charter county with unilateral capabilities and obviously run it by them. So yes, the other thing I'm starting to see that might fit into the sustainability bucket. So we've said paint, landscaping, and signs is depaving. So there might be portions of someone's property where they have a lot of pavement that they don't need pavement, and to excavate that and to remove it to help with stormwater runoff. Other ideas would be rain barrels, some sort of stormwater catchment system that they could use. I don't know if that would qualify as blight, but maybe staff and our citizen advisory boards and the business community could come together and think about ideas that would directly solve the problem of blight. And I think the more latitude that we give them, the higher probability that they're actually going to use those funds. And that's what we want, because I would define success as 100% of the businesses in our community that have real estate in the commercial district used 100% of the funds, whether it's $500 or $1,000. And so those are my thoughts, Mr. Mayor and Council. So, and I think maybe a next step would be to bring this back up if it's appropriate at the next council meeting. I know it's a CRA item, but I don't think we don't have to, but I can formalize this and submit something to our city manager, put it in writing, and maybe the next meeting we can pick it back up if that's okay.
They can work something out and bring it back. I'm sure they will, staff will.
Thank you.
But I only have a couple of things on it. I know back when CRAs were originally set, that it was leaning towards fixing up defunct buildings and houses. How is the residential community going to be reached into this? Is that, I know that was the big part of the fight that originally was set with this, was giving the county the option to spank us a little bit. But how would we be able to do the business and not residential with this?
Well, it's important to keep in mind that in our 2012 study, our CRA that was approved, 56% of the city was met the legal definition of slum and blight. That's largely centered on A1A and going both sides of it quite a bit. So it's mostly going to be commercial property that you're going to capture in that. The CRA plan does have some provision for residential grant programs. And they're detailed in the plan, and perhaps what we could do is review that with the council, what those programs are already talked about in the plan. And it's important that we don't stray far at all, actually, from the plan. You can only do the things that are in your plan. If you didn't put it in the plan back in 2012, you're not going to be able to do it now unless you get the county to approve that. So yes, those are eligible programs that we can develop and bring back to council. There's a couple of things I want to clarify, though, that are important. You cannot leave in a CRA, you cannot leave any unobligated, undesignated funds. Each year they have to all be 100% taken up in that year, and that you can't roll them into the next year. So we do that every year. We've got debt we know is 50% of it. We've got other things that they're going into, such as, corner improvements that are throughout the budget. We account for 100% of this expenditures of the CRA every year. So in this fiscal year, that's already budgeted. All of the CRAs are already budgeted and is going to be soaked up, used up, and 100% of it. So if we want to create a new program, we're going to have to take it out of something else that's already budgeted with CRA funds, or put it into the next fiscal year budget. And I would recommend doing that. The second thing I wanted to point out was, it's better if you define the size of the bucket of money for each program, and then that way you can say what we talked about earlier, the first come, first serve until it's all gone. So if you define a program that includes facade improvements, for example, you put $50,000 towards that, first come, first serve until they're all gone. You define a paint program, you put $50,000 first come, first serve until all gone. You define the buckets very clearly, and then staff can develop application criteria and then promote it. And I think what this council should do is come up with what are those categories and how deep the bucket should be for each one.
I think that's a good thing to do when we do the strategic planning meeting in March. And I think that would be the appropriate time, because then we go to the finance committee and they always figure out how it's used. The other thing I wanted to comment about, isn't it true that if you don't use the amount of money in the CRAs per year, you lose it?
You have to give it back.
You give it back. Okay. The other question I have, in Brevard County, how does that work? I mean, are there some cities just not using it at all?
No, everybody's careful to use it.
Obviously, it's a smart move to use the CRA. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes,
I think that's a great idea. What Todd's talking about is, setting, and I would like not to wait till the strategic planning. Is there a way that we, maybe for the next CRA meeting, we could have a workshop and, invite the public, have their input on, where money should go. And also this plan was implemented in 2012. We're doing a revisioning for the city. Is there a way we can go through this plan? I mean, I know you can't change anything, but kind of tweak it up. And is that possible, Todd?
Yeah, I think maybe where some council members are heading here is, board members, is a community meeting where you review the plan with perhaps people in the community that are unfamiliar with it, an educational part of that meeting, and then solicit feedback from the community on what programs could be successful in the community.
That would be great. Yes.
and I would like to add that the next CRA board meeting would be up to staff if they think they would have that ready at the time. That's what I was going to ask you, Richard.
Yeah, I was going to mention that. And this is just a reminder for the board members, is 3 or 4 years ago, we actually prepared a full-blown suite of programs that could be considered by the CRA board to fund. So that document is already out there. It's been created, and there are commercial programs and grants. There's residential programs and grants. So I think it would be an awesome jumping off point for the board to kind of familiarize themselves with that document once again. And hopefully that could start, your juices would start flowing.
And just to
good
clarify,
stuff would start.
Just to clarify, Dave, thank you for that. Those are program ideas for which we haven't decided what the bucket amount of money should be.
Right.
No, we're just concerned about the issue we had before with the facade grants, as they were called.
Mm-hmm.
And it got us into a lot of turmoil.
You
know the history of that. So that's where I was wanting to kind of make sure we were clear in that area if we did go there.
Yeah, we do know that that's where some communities have run afoul of perhaps the county when they were reviewing their interlocals. I've heard it called the private enrichment programs, and it really gets scrutinized the other way when, in certain communities. So you got to be careful about that. And I think if whatever we do, and this is the third time I've said this tonight, I think it's important to drive it home. It has to be an equal basis, first come, first serve, and that's how you pick the winners and losers. If you're just too late.
Right.
Mr. Mayor, why does it have to be that way? Why couldn't it be $100,000, 100 commercial properties, everyone gets $1,000, you get 6 months to bring your expenditures in. And so say 75 businesses come in and we got $25,000 left over. We pay down debt with the 25,000, or we're obviously not going to give it back. We'll spend the money. Like why do we have to have a loser, at least not create, everyone has an opportunity? Because under the scenario you're saying, Todd, is that it's guaranteed that someone will lose because it's first come, first serve, and there's only a limited amount of funds. At least could we do it in a way that says if everyone comes, there's funds for everybody?
And I totally understand your point there. With the sign program, for example, it's not going to be an issue, I think, because there's just not going to be, we're not going to use it all up.
Mm-hmm.
But having that capacity that you can serve everybody with this, it's still good to write in the rules, first come, first serve.
Mm-hmm.
Even though the capacity is designed for all.
Yeah, well, I think the capacity should be the deadline. Like if you don't get in by this deadline, those funds are going to go down to pay for another CRA project. And so I think urgency would be there.
Hopefully, we haven't had the success with the sign program that we were hoping to have. And it may never be an issue.
Yeah.
Just I'm trying to protect the city's interests here in our CRA, that we put that language in there. Regardless of coverage, we've got plenty of coverage. But we still should put the language in there to make sure.
And to address your concern, because I agree with the signs, not everyone took advantage of it. You talked about having different buckets for the items. That to me sounded complex. Instead, just saying, here's the list of items, and thank you, Dave, for bringing that program back up. We identify the ones that we want to reimburse for, we think is going to be the most meaningful. And the form says, here are the items. When you come back in with your receipt, you're going to have to, tag which ones they fall under. And I think that somebody goes, I don't need a sign, like I was saying earlier, but everyone can, I think landscaping, mulch, paint. And if we give enough in there, I think we're going to increase our chances of it being used, opposed to saying our paint funds used up. Now our sign funds used up. To me, almost like the IRS tax code, there's a list of things and you have your exemptions and you mark them off. The same would apply of any of these below. You can put it all into landscaping. You could put 25% of the money in. And so I think instead of having the separate buckets with separate funds, each one of them are first come, first serve, have one form. Here are all the items you approved. Here's the deadline. If you don't get it in by this time, you miss out. That was it. I just wanted to clarify because you said it has to be this way. And I think there is a way to not pick a loser, not guarantee a loser. That's important. I don't want to guarantee a loser. I want to say, then I can look a business in the eye. Then I could look, and I think the county would be on the board and with this and say, everyone had this same opportunity and the funding was there for everyone. And so that's it. Thank you.
Okay.
Miss,
Go ahead, Mr. Brown.
Okay.
Hold on a minute, Nikki.
okay.
Reference to the CRA, before we have the strategic meeting, At what point do we know how much money we have to work with?
At what point should we know how much money what?
We have to work with on the CRA fund.
John's got that.
So to put things in perspective for the council, and this is very positive, is that, you know, the 21-22 budget is set. And you, as you know, we're doing the Cape Center, we're doing the MGF, whatever. But these programs will be done by September 30th, unless something terrible happens. And what I mean by that then is that all these funds will be used, and now we'll go into 22-23. And as Councilman Morrison was saying, you know, with the city manager, so there's about $943,000, and that, you know, that covers the $938,000 debt service. Well, next year when we get here, if we go on by the same rate, we have $1.9 million this year that came from the shared revenues from the city and Brevard County. And if we go based, if the gross taxable value grows the same way, we'll have $2.2 million next year in 22-23. Well, if all these programs are done, that's the strategic planning, and that's why bringing up the strategic planning meeting is the retreat is so important. Then council is probably going to have about $1 million in the CRA to decide what programs they're going to want to have going forward. Because we finished West Central, we'll be done with the MGF, we'll be done with the Cape Center. Okay, there's $1 million potentially now. Council needs to decide what they're going to do, how they're going to spend it in the CRA.
Yeah.
So that gives you an idea.
Right. I think that's important when we do the strategic meeting, that we know exactly approximately how much we have in funds. So if we want to say we want to put 900,000, I'm just using this as a figure. We want to put 900,000 to make this walkable, bikeable sidewalk project, and we want to take care of it in one swoop. We can do that or that would not fly with CRA, would it?
You can do sidewalk work.
As long as it's within the CRA.
Right.
Whatever project you're going to want to do. But I think the main question you asked is, how much money is council going to have to look at
Right.
to use? And it's going to be about $1 million.
Okay.
And the timing of that is nice, coming out of the retreat period of that March, because that's when we're just starting the budget. We get clear marching orders from the council about how much we want to set aside for this CRA funded portion of, you know, this or that.
Okay. Thank you.
Mickey, did you?
Yes, I would just like to say, I think that if we could have before the strategic meeting, have a CRA workshop for the residents and, you know, kind of set up a presentation where, you know, they can see what we can do with the CRA funds and where they would want to see the money go to. And then when we get to the strategic planning, we'll know what the residents want and what they need, and then we can go on from there. If it's possible to have a CRA workshop between now and March, I would be, you know, in favor of that. And I don't know where we have to go from here. Do we have to make a motion to agree on that? And one more question I have is, I read in the comprehensive or the community redevelopment plan that we can create an ad valorem tax exemption incentive. Is that something we can do to attract businesses maybe to the empty buildings that we have existing? And you know, they're with the Space Center gearing up, and I think there's 6 new companies out there that are going to be launching or support. You know, maybe we could attract some of those businesses to our city, which brings families, hopefully. And, you know, that would be an improvement for our city. But I just think that we should have a workshop, involve the people, educate the people on what the CRA is and how it can help them and their businesses here, and have it before March so we can go into that strategic meeting informed of what the people want.
You feel
So do
like
I
you'll-
need to make the motion?
Wait a minute, Mickey, we got other comments here.
I was just
Okay.
wondering, are we going to have the revisioning?
It's
I
coming up.
thought, when will we be doing that? Because that's where we get a lot of feedback from the residents.
I know Molly's working on that with Doug Thomas, the same gentleman who worked with us before. And I don't know if Molly can hear me now or not, but I'm thinking, she said somewhere in the first quarter of next year. I don't know exactly the date, but not far from the strategic planning retreat. I think what Board Member Kellum is asking is there consensus from this board to schedule a public workshop on CRA programs to happen prior to the strategic planning retreat?
My thinking would be when you have something that's put together by staff,
Mhm.
you can bring it to a council meeting and go from there, whatever date that would be. But y'all would have to have time to put things together for that, I would think.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of loose ends that's sticking out there that we got to keep Mr. Commissioner
Well-
over Floyd County happy. So, you need to
I think,
put all that together, and then I would think bring it to a council meeting or put it on an agenda for.
So if there's consensus, and if there's heads nodding, I think that's enough for us to know to start working on this. We'll talk to commission first, county commission, to make sure we understand how they feel about this. That will inform whatever we do. We'll report back into city council about that, and then also come up with a date if that is the will of this board.
Yeah, and I think that sounds great. Maybe just at any meeting, we can get quick updates on how it's going. I mean, we always have that, right? So that sounds
It'll
good.
be a lot of work to
Yeah.
put that together. So
And I'll record that as a consensus. And I just wanted to point out to something else that Board Member Kellum talked about a moment ago about ad valorem tax abatements. This community did have an ad valorem tax abatement program for 10 years, and it went back to the electorate for reauthorization last November, and it failed. So clearly, this community is not in favor of ad valorem tax abatement incentives.
Okay, thank you.
good thought, but sometimes it.
Well, I just, we had the meeting for home rule, and it was well attended, and the people learned a lot about what home rule is. So I'm thinking, if we could have something along the lines with what CRA money actually does and how it works, it would be, informative for the residents. So that's what I'm thinking.
We'll work on scheduling that workshop after we talk to the commission and report back to this board.
Okay, I think you have consensus for that. We don't need it, right? Council, everybody. Mickey, you feel like you don't need a motion?
No.
We got consensus up here to let them put it together and bring it back to a meeting.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
All right, and thank you. Thank you for your thoughts.
Mhm.
All right, anybody have anything else they want to discuss? We're right up at 6 o'clock, so CRA meeting.